Hello, everybody. I'm going to walk through a couple ways in which people use web pages in a different way. But first, I wanted to just go over quickly what we have here. I put together a sample page with a couple common elements. There's a logo up in one corner, navigation on the other side. Notice that the first two are drop-down menus. There's some content here with headings and paragraphs, a couple links in place. I have 3 columns with some images, and those will help show what alt text sounds like in different instances. And then I have a few different ways that article cards are typically marked up. I can show you what the differences are for both keyboard users and screen reader users. So first, we're going to start with a keyboard user. Why would someone not use a mouse or touchscreen? Well, some people might have what's called a vestibular disorder, which means they might have quaking hands, shaking or tremors in some of their extremities, and it makes fine pointers like mouse control difficult. Or, temporarily they might have broken their right hand, or they're a quote unquote power user and they oscillate between a mouse and a keyboard, using the keyboard to quickly skip around a page or to use a form, for example. So a keyboard is going to highlight interactive elements. That means links, buttons, and form fields. It's not going to interact with text content. So the primary way the keyboard is used is with the tab key. And so if my focus is on the browser bar, let's say the page is just loaded, and I click the tab button, you're going to start to see a little indicator move around. Now, typically when the page first loads, I'm going to invoke what should be on the page is a hidden skip to content link, hidden or visible, frankly. What this does is it allows someone who uses a keyboard or a screen reader to skip over the navigation and get right to the page content. The idea being that some navigation might be pretty large and have a number of links, and it's very repetitive if I go from one page to another, your home page to your about page or some other deeper page, to keep having to skip over the same navigation links over and over again. So this is a way to skip over that. It's usually hidden from view, but it's usually the first thing that someone with a keyboard can tab to invoke. It becomes visible because remember, a keyboard user is still a visual user. They can hit the enter key, and now I've skipped down to the content below. And my focus is now in there. The next tab I hit will be any interactive element that might be within that content. All right, I'm going to come back up. I'm going to show you the focus ring. Focus ring is what we call the design around an interactive area. Now, on some of these elements in the navigation, I've followed the pattern of making sure that the focus and hover state share some styles. So if I use my mouse, I get the gray box indicating that there's a hover here. I use the keyboard, I get the gray box, but I also get a blue outline in this case. I get some other indicator, some very easy to notice visual indicator of where my cursor is. Remember, this is the cursor for a keyboard user, just like this is the cursor for a mouse. But notice something, I can invoke this drop-down menu with my mouse, but I can't invoke it with the keyboard. And that's a problem. I put that problem there on purpose to illustrate a point. When menu items are not coded properly, this can happen. And this means that a keyboard user has no way to get into that menu. They are missing content. And further, because they're a visual user, they don't even know that there's content there that they're missing, whereas a screen reader gives you a hint. Instead, what should happen, and there should be a visual indication that there is something more to see here, that there's something hidden from view, and that's what that little downward facing triangle is there to try to do. If I am focused on this element and I hit the Enter key or the space bar, I can open that menu, and my next tab press will actually go inside of that menu. I can keep going, and I can go over to the next item, or I can go back. Shift tab is how you go in reverse, and I can hit Enter again or spacebar and close that item. And now that it's closed, I don't have to go into it at all. Now notice something else, the About link. I also purposefully removed the focus from this element. It doesn't even have a hover state on it. So it's hard to tell that it's an interactive element at all, both for a mouse user and for a keyboard user. My keyboard focus is currently on that element, but there's no visual indication of that. A while ago, it was pretty common that designers would get developers to remove the focused styles. They thought they were ugly. Browsers came with a default style of a faint dotted gray link outline around elements. Designers thought this was ugly. They didn't think to redesign that in a prettier way. They just had people remove it, never really understanding why it was there in the first place. And so now that we understand that that is terrible practice, we encourage people to design a focus state just they would design a hover state or anything else. But you still see this pattern prevalent sometimes. And this is one of the reasons why we want to avoid that kind of pattern. So invisibly, I don't know where I am, and imagine if the whole page was like that. It would be impossible for a keyboard user to use. Okay, so moving on. The next time I tab now is going to be right to a link. Again, a keyboard user is a visual user, so we're really concerned with interactive elements on the page. If I wanted to read, if I wanted to scroll, the arrow keys do that for me as well. So I can scroll, or I can use this as a way to skip over content. All right. The next thing I'm going to be able to focus on is actually going to be down in the articles. There's nothing interactive in the next 3 columns. So I'm skipping over that. And now in focus is that image in the article. Now, with a screen reader, this is going to become a little bit more problematic, but with a keyboard user, you may also see how this could be a little bit confusing. My article, my first one here is very interactive. There's a link around the image, there's a link around the title, and once more, there's a read more link. There's 3 different ways I can interact with this article, but they all go to the same place. Not so terrible for a visual user, but it might be a little annoying if there's a lot of these articles to have to tab through each one of them 3 times in order to go from one to the other. The next article has 1 link around the entire thing. And for a visual user like this, that's not too bad. It's easy for me to move between them. If they were all like this, I could quickly skip over, and it's very apparent where my cursor is at the moment. The third example is a little bit like the first for a keyboard user, in that all 3 of these elements are still interactive. They look interactive and they can be interacted with, but we have the same problem as we do with the first article. And then finally, this last one, there is a link around the whole thing, but it's a little bit hidden for a keyboard user. And the only interactive element really is the heading itself, which is a little bit more what we would want the experience to be, coincidentally, both for a keyboard user, but also a mouse user. If I were to go back and use my mouse and show you real quickly, this is pretty common. We see this a lot. You want big images to be interactive, so it's understandable why someone built it this way. But we can also tell that from a screen reader or keyboard user point of view, this is a lot of redundancy. This is a little bit better. This is even better. This is everything good about this, but made with a single link inside the element as well. And when we get to a screen reader experience, we'll show you why that's important. Okay, so that is a quick overview of what a keyboard user experiences. And again, this is easy for you to do. You can do this on any web page. Start letting the mouse, set that aside, click once in the top corner to get the focus up at the top of the page where you want it to be, and start using Tab to move through links and Shift Tab to move backwards, and see what you start to experience. Maybe you start to notice that your navigation on a particular website isn't built properly and doesn't let a keyboard really move through the content very well. It's great to start to experience the web in these alternate ways. Now, for others of you out there that are interested in the screen reader experience, it is not that difficult. So let's get into it. On a Mac, we're lucky that we have pretty good screen reader software out there, both for iOS and Mac OS, and it's called VoiceOver. And my system is set up in much of the same way that a default system right out of the factory would be set up. I can invoke and turn screen VoiceOver on using the command F5.
Welcome to VoiceOver. VoiceOver speaks descriptions of items on the screen and can be used to control the computer using only.
So
VoiceOver on Firefox. Code Pen. VoiceOver testing for common code problems. Window. Code Pen. VoiceOver testing for common code problems. Web content has keyboard focus.
Okay, so it just read the page title to me and a little bit more information as well to give me context about where I am. Remember, now this is a non-visual experience. You are having a visual version of that, and the little bubbles are a visual version of what's being read out loud. But for someone who uses this day in, day out, they're probably blind. They might be someone who has failing eyesight, macular degeneration, something like that, where they are maybe not legally blind, but they're pretty much blind. So they're somewhat visual, but not completely visual. There's a couple different types of folks who would be using something like this, but I think it's a good way to experience an alternate way that web pages, when built properly, can be used in lots of different scenarios. So again, much like a keyboard user, the tab key is going to be the primary way that you move around. So if I tab a few times.
Link, projects, list 4 items.
Okay, so
current item, link, back, image, actually. Company logo, banner. Visited, link, skip to content.
Same things happen, but now they're being read out loud with some extra context. Since I've already used this, it's telling me it's a visited link, and the content of that link is skip to content.
Current item, link, image, company logo, banner.
Notice with images, it will tell you that it's an image. So don't feel like you need to put the word image in your alt text. I could have said company logo image, but then that would be redundant. Image is already in there. It's going to be read out loud, so you don't need to add it. Current item is an extra little bit of code that we put on that element to let someone know that that's the current page they're on. If I click to this link, I'm going to end up on in the same place. It's the home page. The link around this logo is my homepage link, and it's also the current item in this context. I'm on the home page. Now, if I tab again, notice what it says on projects.
Link, projects, list 4 items.
It's telling me that it's a list of 4 items. Now,
topics down pointing black point, link, projects, current item, link, projects, list 4 items.
As far as I can tell, I can't get into that list. I can't open it and find out what's inside, but it is telling me a little bit more context than a keyboard user gets. So I know something's missing, something's broken. Moving on to topics, this is actually coded in a much better way.
Topics down pointing black pointer, collapsed, menu button, group.
Okay, so funnily enough, the VoiceOver software does try to describe things visually in a couple cases. In this case, because I'm using a character for the down pointing arrow, it actually read that character and a description of that character out loud. But it also told me that I'm in a collapsed group. So topics, down pointing arrow, collapsed, menu button, group. That's telling me that there's something more here. So here, when I press enter, and then tab again.
Link, drop down item 4, menu topics, level 2.
Now I'm inside, and it's telling me that I'm inside. I'm on a link. The content of that link is drop down item 4. I'm inside menu topics, and I'm level 2, meaning that I'm one level down in the hierarchy. If there was tertiary levels, it would announce that level 3, level 4.
Link, drop down item 5, link, drop down item 4.
Through that. Maybe I'm not interested in any of that.
Topics down pointing black pointer, expanded, menu button, group, list 4 items.
Notice that now that it's open, it's telling me that it's expanded. Before it told me that it was collapsed. Now I'm going to close it.
Link, about us.
So screen reader, again, is not a visual medium primarily. So the about us, while a keyboard user had no idea their cursor was here, screen reader has no problem because programmatically this content is still here.
Link, contact.
Okay, so that's going through interactive elements, but of course a screen reader can do more than that. It wouldn't be very useful if it didn't. So with the key command control option held down, I can use the arrow keys left and right and read non-interactive content. So I'm going to hold that down.
End of list.
Now I'm going to exit the list that I'm in.
End of primary navigation. End of banner.
Lets me know where I am.
Main.
Now I'm in the main content.
Article.
I'm in an article.
Heading level 1, sample problematic page.
Okay. Now I'm inside some content and it's reading it out to me. Notice heading levels are read out loud.
Heading level 2, disclosure.
Okay. Now that's some paragraph content.
16-point Helvetica Noi, black on white. This document purposely does a few things wrong to show what an inaccessible site looks like and behaves. Keyboard focus has been removed from some links. Drop-down navigation is not keyboard accessible. Some alt text is bad on purpose. Cards are not all great screen reader experiences. These examples are for demonstration only.
Okay. So that was a lot, and it's read a little bit quickly, but actually this is pretty slow. People who use screen readers day in, day out crank that speed up a lot more so they can get through content a lot more quickly. And after a while, it just starts to sound normal. But that's what the out loud experience is. It's really verbose. Everything is literally read to you. And that is not unlike how people's day-to-day lives are when they're using the web with this kind of technology. I want to continue moving on.
Heading level 2, navigation patterns.
Okay. Now it's going to be slightly different because there's a couple links in here. So you'll notice that the content gets chopped up.
For more information about a complete example with arrow keys activated by JavaScript, the ESC key, and more. Link, click here.
Now it's telling me that was content. This is a link.
16-point Helvetica Noi, black on white. Sorry, we mean visit.
Now, again, sometimes it describes what it's reading. I can't really tell why. It doesn't always do that. On headings, for example, it doesn't describe the way they look. But here you heard it describe the font and the way that it's visually being presented.
Visited, link, the W3S disclosure pattern. 16-point Helvetica Noi, black on white, for sample site navigation.
Okay, so now we've gone through some content and a couple links. I'm going to move on, but I'm going to show you something next that should be a little bit of a surprise.
Heading level 2, who is the cutest?
Okay. In knowing that we were going to be doing this, I also wanted to show you how we can hide content visually, but give screen readers extra context. So with this group of 3 columns, each one has a header, but the group of 3 doesn't have a header of its own visually. I think visually, maybe you don't need it. That could probably be argued, but it doesn't have one visually, but it can have one in context for a screen reader. So there's a little bit of code on here that hides it visually, but lets it be read as content to a screen reader. So now they understand they're going from what they've just read into a brand new section, a heading level 2. And inside that, the next thing will be
heading level 3, kittens.
A heading level 3. All right. So these examples were put together to try to show you what different kinds of how we handle alt text on images, why that's important. I'm going to move on to the kittens first.
Image.
Okay, nothing. Just tells me that there's an image there. There is no alt text here. And that was not a terrible experience. It's maybe a little confusing because I know as a non-sighted person, there's an image there. I'm missing maybe a little bit of context. No one described it for me, but other software, screen reader software like JAWS or NVDA, will actually read that source path. So what they might hear instead is image slash path slash image 1014738-big.jpg. It might hear that read out. So while it is telling you something, none of that is very descriptive. It's not helpful. It's just noise. So it's not good practice to not have an alt text there at all.
This image has no alt. Heading level 3. No. Doggos.
Okay. Now we're on Doggos. Notice that some words just don't get said correctly. Doggos is what the screen reader said. And that's fine. Most people will be able to figure out what's happening in context, or they're going to hear the same thing over and over again and understand what's actually trying to be said. In this case, we have an alt tag present, but it doesn't have any content.
This image has an alt text attribute, but it is empty. Heading level 3. No. This image has an alt text attribute, but it is empty.
Notice we skipped right over it. The screen reader says, no one has described this image, and that is likely on purpose. It does not add context to what people are already seeing or hearing. In this case, that's not quite correct, but I did it for illustrative purposes. The image that does not have alt text just tells you that there's an image there, which again tells you that maybe you're missing something you don't really know, while this one is saying we are deciding not to describe this image because it's decorative. Maybe the heading is enough context, or the text below it is enough context. Doesn't add much if you describe that image, so someone chose to not describe it. That is a good practice, and that is fine. And it's important sometimes to think about, when is it useful to give someone the same experience as a sighted user, and when is it more useful not to give them extra context and noise. A better example might have been if this were an icon next to a heading. The heading is usually enough context that the icon doesn't need to be described for someone who can't see it. And moving on, we could check out squirrels.
Heading level 3. Squirrels?
In this case, we gave it a descriptive alt text.
An American red squirrel clutching an acorn high in a coniferous tree. Image.
So that's a pretty good description of what we're seeing here. And maybe if there was content around it that didn't say you were looking at an American red squirrel, that would be very useful. Notice too that, like we had seen before with the logo, the word image is being added automatically to the end of it. So we don't have to use that word at all in our description. So that's a couple examples of alt text and good practice when designing images on your page and in context in your content. Now we're going to move on to article content. I'm going to switch back to using the tab key.
Link, image, a mountain scene over a lake and forest, image, article 1.
Okay, so this is and I use the word image. I just broke my own rule. This is my more verbose pattern. This actually breaks accessibility, and I'll tell you why in a second.
Link, an article with too many links. Visited, link, read more.
Okay, so what's happening here is probably pretty common. We have an interactive article, and again, for a mouse user, we want to make, or touchscreen, we want to make everything as clickable as possible. You put a link around that image, you put a link around the title, you don't put a link around the entire excerpt, but you do maybe add a read more link at the end just to hammer home to someone that you want them to read this article. Well, a screen reader needs, just like a keyboard user, needs to tab through all three of those. And it gets really redundant. Further, when we look at the Rotor experience next, We have 3 links that all go to the same place, but all 3 links have different content. And that fails the WCAG 2.4.9 rule, that we have too many links with different that describe themselves differently, but all go to the same destination. That's a no-no. We want links on pages to be unique. So this breaks that.
Link, click here.
If I move on to
link, click, visited,
next.
link, the W3S disclosure pattern, link,
Hello.
heading level 3, a mountain scene over a lake and forest image article 2 an article, link, click, visited, link, image, link, an article with too many links, visited, link, read more.
If I move on to the next one, we'll get maybe a better experience, but maybe not.
Link, heading level 3, a mountain scene over a lake and forest image article 2 an article with a verbose out loud experience because of the way this card is marked up in HTML. All the content gets read as the link text. Read more.
Okay. So now, while that's a better keyboard experience and maybe a better mouse user experience because we have one big target, it's not a great screen reader experience because the alt text, which is hidden for most people, but useful potentially to a screen reader, is being read out loud, as well as the heading and as well as the descriptor, the excerpt. So that's a lot of content being read in rapid succession, and that ends up making a really long link. So that's not a great experience either. Let's move on to the next one. Nothing happens here.
Link, an article with a better out loud experience. 16-point Helvetica Noi, black on white. This markup pattern contains 3 links but 2 are hidden from screen readers. Group.
Okay. So here we used a little bit of trickery. We went back to the pattern on the first one, where everything is wrapped in its own independent link, but we're hiding the image, the link around the image, and we're hiding the link around the read more because we know they're redundant. We know that the most important one is the link around the heading. It'll make a unique link. It's a singular link for a screen reader, and it's just a better experience in that way. I can read that. I can get that
link,
read to me.
An article with a better out loud experience.
And I can still get the with the option control arrow.
16-point Helvetica Noi, black on white. This markup pattern contains 3 links but 2 are hidden from screen readers.
I can get the excerpt written to me as well, but I'm not getting an overly verbose experience, especially if I want to try to move through a lot of these articles very quickly. Finally, let's take a look at the next one.
Link, an article with an alternate out loud experience.
Okay, very much.
16-point Helvetica Noi, black on white. This markup pattern is a little cleaner, but the text content is not selectable. Read more. Very much a similar experience to the third one. The code is different. I'm not physically hiding anything. I could, with my control option arrow again, get and read heading level,
that.
A mountain scene over a lake and forest image article 4, image.
I can get to the image, whereas
16-point
here,
heading level 3, link, heading level 3, a mountain scene over a lake and forest, heading level 3, 16, a mountain scene over a lake and forest image article 4, image.
So you saw that I was skipping over that image completely. So using the attribute that I added there to hide it from screen reader makes it so that I can't interact with it one way or the other. Here in this example, it's not wrapped in a link and I'm not hiding it, so I can interact with it. But if I'm only interested in links, it's not part of my link either. So it's not clouding up and adding more verbosity to my link. This is done in a slightly different way for you CSS folks out there. I can share the link to this demo and you can check out how it was done. It's a pretty common pattern right now as well. The only drawback to it, it makes a nice big clickable area, great for touch screens as well, good for screen readers and keyboard users as well, as we've seen. The only drawback is that the content, here I can select content.
Screen readers.
Whoops. Here I can select content. Here I cannot. The content is not selectable. You can't cut and paste it. Important for some people, not important for others. Something to consider when you're looking at a pattern like that. Okay, we went over keyboard use. We went over simple screen reader use. This is without invoking too many special things. using the tab key to move around interactive elements, and using the control option arrow keys to move through non-interactive elements. Now I'm going to show you the rotor. So I'm pressing control option U.
Headings menu. On item 3, an article with an alternate out loud experience.
All right. So the rotor is a way to break the page up into different chunks. And we're looking at right now all the headings on the page. Now you get a sense of what's important about making sure that you're following the right hierarchy. Here it's very clear. I've got heading level 1 at the top. I've got heading level 2s below it, and some 3s below those. And the structure is evident by the heading levels. And I can move around.
3, 2, recent articles. 3, 3, 3, 2, heading level 3.
I'm going to stop there. There's no number here, and there's no content. It's just a description of the heading level. Why is that? Well, somewhere in my markup, I have an empty header. This happens in content management systems, maybe without you even knowing it. But that's what that ends up sounding like. It didn't affect us as we were going through the rest of the page. But here, when I'm looking at all the headings, it might be a little bit confusing.
2, heading level 3. 2, heading level 3.
I can't tell what this is or where it is. So it feels broken. It's not a terrible thing, but it is something that happens from time to time and something to be aware of. If you have software that checks your site for things such as this might come up from time to time, and you want to go in and try to clean those up. Now, I can use arrow keys up and down to go through the items in this list.
2, 1, sample problematic page.
I can also go and I can hit the enter key to go to that heading, but I can also use the right and left arrow keys to go through some other options that the rotor presents to me.
Articles menu.
So this is a list of all the article elements on the page.
Non-visited links menu. On item, an article with an alternate, an article, amount, click, about, prod, company logo, current item.
So this is an option that I had turned on actually for my rotor experience. I like knowing what links on the page I haven't visited. And that's something that someone can turn on. They can also turn on a list of all the links on the page or lists of links that they have visited. Notice this is most of them, but also notice
click here.
This guy. Click here. Not a great experience, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. So this is the non-visited links menu.
Windows spots menu.
It's Windows spots.
Links menu. On item, an article with an alternate out loud, click here.
Here is all the links on the page. So skip to content, it shows up here, company logo, your navigation shows up here. Your navigation could be quite a few of them as well. Notice that only some of the navigation items are showing up here. The topics toggle is actually a button, so it's not a link. I marked it up as a button element, and so it's not showing up here. And that's maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing for you to think about. But really what I wanted to talk to is the click here and the read more. So you've probably heard people complain about click here as the link text or read more as the link text. This is really the reason why. When you break up the content and just look at a list of all the links, you divorce it of its context. I have no idea what click here is going to do. Where is it going to take me? Or the read more, what am I reading more of? When I'm divorced of context on the page, links like that are really problematic. Notice we only have one read more, and it's in the first article, the article with too many links, because it wasn't marked up in such a way that it's hidden from screen readers. So if you don't take that extra step, it clouds up a list like this and makes it really difficult to use. The click here is terrible practice, and we see that a lot. To find out more about some such and such, click here. They make that the link text instead of making the such and such a link text, which would probably be a lot more useful. So always think about rephrasing things and getting rid of these things from your writing to make the page more accessible more understandable, but you know what? It's going to make your SEO stronger as well. If a robot crawler can understand the context of that link, just like a person using this assistive technology can understand the context of that link.
Landmarks menu. On item disclaimer content.
I can also use the rotor to go through landmarks. So if there were a lot of sections on this page, if there were multiple navigations on this page, I could choose which one I wanted to go to and navigate right to that.
Form controls menu.
If there were more form elements too, I'd be able to get those. But notice the topic shows up here because, again, like I said, I marked it up as a button, and a button is a form element, not a link. A button does an on-page action, whereas a link takes you to an external resource. So form controls show up separately from links.
Headings menu. On item 3, an article with an alternate out loud experience. 3, 2, recent articles. 3, squirrels. Right. 3, 2, who is the cutest?
And now we're back to the heading level. So I'm going to hit the escape key to get rid of that.
16-point Helvetica Noi, black on white. This markup pattern contains 3 links, but 2 are hidden from screen readers. VoiceOver off.
Okay. Well, I hope that was helpful. I'm going to put a list of the key commands and things that we've made note of in the article itself. But again, we reviewed what a keyboard user goes through, a little bit about what a typical mouse user goes through and how those two might be different, and also what a typical and very simplified view, trust me, I do not a power user of VoiceOver, but what a lot of people go through when using a screen reader. And it's not that hard to do. If you're a designer or someone with a Mac, you should start to use VoiceOver from time to time to check your designs out, understand how the non-visual world sees, quote unquote, the pages that you're putting together, so that you can give a little bit more consideration to what that experience is going to be like. If you're a client, if you're someone who owns a website, who doesn't do the development yourself, these are all still really good things to know and understand. Ask your developers about, ask your design friends about, and gain a little bit of empathy of what that experience can be like. I hope this was helpful to you, and definitely reach out if there are more questions, or if you're looking for other kinds of tutorials on how to use this kind of technology.